thank you so much for joining me today. So the idea of this interview is that my company Energy Rise, I want to bring mindfulness in as many different techniques as possible to as wide an audience as I can reach. Some people just jump straight into the experience, and I feel that some people need to understand the workings of the brain and the benefits of what's happening when they do their mindfulness practice. So for the audience, I'm joined by Tamara Russell, who is a clinical psychologist, a martial artist, and a neuroscientist. So if somebody is starting mindfulness for the first time and kind of lost, they've opened up the door of like, I want to become more mindful, what are some techniques that people can use and apply in their lives to experiment in the world of mindfulness?
Yeah. Well, in my book, #What is Mindfulness, I do kind of have a whole chapter about mindfully preparing for mindfulness, because there's so many options out there. So there's apps, there's videos, there's books, there's CDs, there's courses online, there's courses with teachers, there's workshops, retreats, 10-week course, 5-week course, lunch and learn. I mean, there's just a huge variety of options out there. And what you select, I think, really is directly related to your intentions and your motivations. Mm-hmm. Why is it that you want to try mindfulness? What is it that you hope to get out of it? How much time, money, effort are you willing to put into something which is fundamentally a training? So if we're going to go to a gym, we don't just kind of like jump into the first gym that we walk past on the street. You know, we look at the gym, we see what classes are there, we think about our bodies, about how we like to move. Do we like dancing? Do we want to be on a bike? Do we like exercising by ourselves? Do we need a teacher? Are we overweight? Do we have some special needs that mean we might need a particular kind of class or a particular type of gym? We would think about all of those things. But in mindfulness, everybody just goes, oh, well, I got the app, or I went on a retreat. Yeah. You know, they're kind of, somehow, they don't take the same care. And that can lead to disappointment, confusion, and in some cases, rare but possible, actually distress and difficulties. So I encourage people to think about what do I want to get out of this? Am I in the kind of let me dip a toe in kind of vibe? Am I in, I've got a serious mental or physical health problem and I've been reading about research and I want to use this like a treatment? Am I coming from a spiritual practice already, in which case I've got a bit of insight, so I might be ready for a bit more, but actually I might also need to be aware how that biases my approach to mindfulness. And I do find that in the yoga practitioners, also in some of the psychologists. They're coming with a very strong training. Their default mode network has already been shaped quite significantly in terms of understanding awareness and consciousness. And so when they approach mindfulness, they bring all of this baggage with them, and it's got to be like undone a little bit. It's fascinating to me how that plays out. You know, the minute you introduce an exercise, like, it's a bit like that, and then the brain goes, I know what this is, and it shuts off. And then I'm there going, now is the chance to practice what is real curiosity. Mm-hmm. Very hard if you're an expert. So the more expert you are, I think the harder it is to kind of come to mindfulness. But then I'm like, right, you're in it now. You're in that like loosening the default mode network. So like, go for it. But it's hard. The other caveat I do sort of talk about a lot, which is sort of how I try to bring a gentle part of the clinical work into my teaching. It can be helpful to reflect on your relating history. Because the minute you pop out and start relating to your mind or your body or your thoughts or your emotions, all your patterning and conditioning about relating is going to be there. Mm-hmm. So if you've come from early experiences where you didn't learn much about how to relate in compassionate and kind ways, if you're coming from an experience of neglect or trauma or difficulties, or even I would say this boarding school syndrome, you know, it's likely that you're going to be, you might find difficulty when you're relating to yourself. Mm-hmm. And you'll definitely find some clues about how you're going to relate to yourself based on a reflection about your early experiences. And if you are in that position where things are difficult for you, you're kind of in the red, as I call it, you're stressed, you're anxious, you're feeling isolated, alone, unsupported, you haven't really got the skills to deal with it, I mean, I would encourage you to have a teacher I see that lots of people are just getting recommended apps by their GPs for some quite serious, mental health stuff, and some of that's not appropriate in my view, because then they're just left there practicing judging and feeling worse, and there's no one to hold it, and it's not, it's the opposite of what we want.
Yeah.
In mindfulness, it really is the opposite.
So there's obviously the mindfulness practice of sitting down and breathing, but there's also other techniques people can use. But I think both of us use in our practices movement meditation in some way, or mindfulness movement. So I just wondered if you could explain more about how we can bring different techniques and movement maybe into mindfulness.
Well, those are my two favourite words, mindful movement. So I showed you this before, which was the classic use of the breath as the meditation object. But if you're working with this model, actually you can put anything in there. And I do like to put movement in there. And so, some of my first practices and really my own journey has been with mindful movement. And I talk about, some of the real benefits and the neuroscience of that in my first book, which is called Mindfulness in Motion. But you can put in here a shoulder roll. You can put in here lifting the finger up and down. You can put in there the movement of Tai Chi or a movement from Kung Fu. You can make this walking. Actually, you can even put talking in there. So I could become very aware of the movement of the face and the muscles of the face. The pathway is the same. Bring your full focused attention to the movement as it unfolds over time, paying attention on purpose, moment by moment, without judging. Notice when the mind wanders, become aware and get back. So I come from this Bruce Lee philosophy of mindfulness can be any movement that you make. So thinking about movements that we make day to day. I mean, even getting up in bed, sitting up, putting your feet on the floor, standing up, transitioning from stillness to movement, walking to the bathroom, reaching to pick up the glass that's by the side of the bed. A really good one, slow motion mindful movement, picking up your phone. When do you pick up your phone? I mean, the habit of picking it up in the morning.
First thing, isn't it?
First thing. I mean, it's designed to make us do that. So you're really giving a strong workout to your brain if you can tackle this addiction, actually, first thing in the morning with a slow-mo reach for the phone that gives you the chance to see what is my intention as I'm reaching for the phone. Is it my choice to reach for my phone now? Is that healthy for me to see all those messages and start scrolling before I've even properly opened my eyes? So mindful movement for me it's so rich, especially when we use it day to day. And I say to people, look, you haven't got time to meditate. Who has got time to sit on a cushion? I mean, certainly not a busy mum, certainly not a mumpreneur or a busy, awesome woman that's running 3 businesses and trying to save the world. So let's make mindful movement part of what we do. Walking to the tube, in between meetings, walking up or down the escalator when you're traveling, standing when you're waiting to get your shopping, walking around the supermarket, just being present as you move your body whenever you're moving it. And maybe picking a place that you can do something little every day. And you are training the brain. The conditions around it are a bit more busy, of course. It's not the same as taking this whole system into a cave somewhere, or into retreat somewhere. Fantastic. You don't have to do the shopping. You can have your food prepared for you. You've got optimum conditions to train. But most people don't have that. So how do we help everybody?
And make it accessible, which is what I'm really trying to do through Energy Rise, my company. Just give lots of people different doors to find how mindfulness can work for them every day.